Good morning, folks. I'm Steve Kellner with California Education Partners. I'm thrilled to be here at the Early Math Symposium. And as folks are coming in, I'd love to launch a quick poll and find out who's in the room. So if you could take a moment and share your answers when you see this. As folks are responding to that, just want to say that California Education Partners is a nonprofit that works across California with networks of school districts, and really excited to talk specifically with you today about our work in early mathematics, specifically around coherence from transitional kindergarten through third grade. As folks again are coming in, please go ahead and share your responses for the poll so we know who's in the room. I'm going to end that poll in about 30 seconds. So again, at California Education Partners, we are, like I think all of you, very excited about the possibility of universal transitional kindergarten across California for all 4-year-olds. It is no doubt a historic opportunity, but also a very, very complex challenge. And we want to make sure that we take full advantage of this to support our youngest learners, to have a trajectory that they can make the most of their early mathematics opportunities. And again, thanks for giving the feedback on the poll. Great to see so many different folks represented, from early education to K-12 to folks at the county offices and coaches and K-12 administrators. So thanks so much for being part of this today. At California Education Partners, we base our work in the belief that the folks in the public school system are the ones most capable of changing outcomes for students. The capacity of our California educators is absolutely fantastic. And when we work with networks of districts, we work in a way that builds capacity in each of those districts so that the work will continue after the network formally ends. And so just to give you a sense of our work over the years, we've been doing this for about 12 years and put together a number of networks that you can see on the screen there. We're currently working with more than 75 districts. We primarily work with districts that we call the magic middle districts in California. I'm sure many of you know that there's over 1,000 school districts, but we tend to focus on the school districts that are somewhere between 2,000 and 20,000 students in enrollment, which is about 40% of California districts, but almost half of all California students. And so the networks that I'll be talking about today feature districts that fall into that particular demographic. Not that this work can't benefit the smallest of districts and the largest, but just to give you a sense of where we work. And we're really excited to be able to work with folks that might be overlooked, that aren't the large coastal districts that everyone tends to focus on. So today, again, thanks so much for being here today. We're going to talk about the power of UTK to third grade coherence, what it looks like to collaborate district to district to get that moving. Take a deep dive specifically into our collaboration. We call it P3CC, the Preschool to Third Grade Coherence Collaboration, and talk about what it means to have these promising practices go across the state. And then I'll ask you guys to make a commitment at the end of the session, what it means to bring coherence back to your organization. And as we get started, I'll just remind you, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the question and answer feature rather than the chat feature. That will allow me to answer questions as we go. It'll also allow me to answer questions after the session ends. So again, please use the Q&A feature instead of the chat feature to put questions out there. So want to give you a little sense of what we do. So I'm going to play a short video that gives you a sense of how California Education Partners interacts with districts and to hear from some of the districts that we work with. Ed Partners is a group of educators supporting other educators. We believe strongly that we solve problems better together than we do by ourselves.
We get to know our districts so well. We understand their context, where they're coming from, who they are as a team, what initiatives they have on board. And we use that information to differentiate what they need in going into a meeting with them and working with them.
Ed Partners is more effective because they really understand education, and it's really about supporting where districts are with real problems. It's not like that they come in with an agenda that we have to adapt to. Their agenda is our agenda. They know how to give us the resources to succeed.
They've been many times in the shoes that we are in. They come from the educational field themselves in all capacities. There's former superintendents, there's former principals, teachers. So they know and have been in our shoes.
It was told to us that California Ed Partners did not have the answers to our problems. All we are going to be good at is facilitating, helping you, supporting you, getting you experts to help and to assist, but the answer lives within you.
It's so important to really spend some time defining really what your problem is and what it is that you're trying to get at. Because unless you really invest the time to do that, then you are going to jump to solutions too quickly.
I just don't think that there's better professional learning than to work with other school districts. And what a privilege it's been to get to know the ins and outs of other districts, what they're grappling with, how they're coming up with their own solutions.
Today's third grader only has one chance at being a third grader. Today's ninth grader, this is their only ninth grade year. And so for us to miss that opportunity to support them right now is really doing a disservice to the kids in California.
We can't just ask for early adopters. You have to have evidence. You have to show that this actually works. And so teachers on the ground doing the work and being able to show their colleagues next door that the shifts that they're making in the classroom is making an impact on students. They have more and more of their colleagues who want to test and do the same things that they're doing.
It is about taking ongoing feedback and adjusting and modeling for the people that you're providing this professional development to. They modeled those strategies for us.
So we continue to improve our work over time. And that's something that our districts do every day. So we can't sit back with one particular approach that worked 12 years ago and assume that that approach is going to work.
We can't have children who get a great first grade teacher and then maybe a not so great second grade teacher and a not so great third grade teacher. We need everybody to be great. And if everybody's great, then that child now graduating from the system has had a consistent, coherent program because those effective practices are present everywhere.
Okay. So that gives you a sense, a little bit of what we do and how we work with districts and what they have to say about us. I want to spend a little time talking about the power and the importance of coherence as it relates to early mathematics between transitional kindergarten and third grade. So why focus on that grade range? What's going on there? Well, as many of you know, because you're in it every day, more than 3 million culturally and linguistically diverse children under 5 live in California. So there is absolutely a need there. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, California has one of the largest achievement gaps at kindergarten entry anywhere in the country. So we know that we have to start before kindergarten to close that gap. And then finally, starting this year, this fall, the shift to universal transitional kindergarten is a step in the right direction. And as we'll talk about, it by itself is not the only step, but it is a step in the right direction. And so I want to talk a little bit about that gap at early education. There was a study, and all these slides will be available for you for downloading. It came out about a year ago that really illustrated this point in a way that I want to make sure everyone is clear about. I'll start with the positives. The positives is between third grade and ninth grade, California schools actually do a fantastic job of providing students with 1 year of learning for 1 year of school. In fact, they do a little bit better. As you can see there, 1.1 years of growth, 1.2 years of growth by many California districts. The problem is that so many California students reach third grade 2 years or more behind where we would like children to enter third grade. And as you can see from that dotted line, even with a third grade to ninth grade trajectory where students are learning a little more than 1 year of knowledge for 1 year of school, students can almost never catch up. And so really then the call for us, the call for all of you is what can we do between preschool and third grade so that students arrive at third grade ready to go? Because we know that our system actually does a really nice job for students when they arrive at third grade on grade level. So I thought that was pretty compelling evidence as to why the coherence in the early grades is so important. And again, thanks for those of you who are using the Q&A feature. The idea that if you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A section. This is just a less fancy way of illustrating the same point. The idea of thinking about if you had a system where you're working right now that had a coherent, aligned approach, you're going to accelerate students' learning and teaching practices across the grade levels, as opposed to sort of the start-stop situation that occurs in many places. So coherence isn't just sort of a fancy academic word, although we work very closely with some great researchers. It's really about learning. And so just a couple things to illustrate here. Students progress vertically through our system, right? From pre-K to K to 1 to 2. But most of our systems are organized horizontally. Kinder teachers talk with kinder teachers and plan with kinder teachers. First grade teachers talk with other first grade teachers and become aligned that way. But the students experience the system and the families experience that system vertically. So the idea of the interconnectedness is really important and maybe not designed for in our system, because students learn across grade levels. And as you guys know, just because a student is in kindergarten, that can mean a wide range of ability levels and focus. And so does the kindergarten teacher understand what happened in TK? And does the kindergarten teacher understand what happens in first grade? Because any of her students might be anywhere on that continuum. So the idea that the instructional and system coherence need to work together to serve students as best we can. As you heard in the video, the idea that we need everybody to be great. We can't assume that a student's going to have a great kinder experience, but a not so great first grade experience, but we'll take care of that in second grade. We need everybody to be great in service of our students. And so when we say instructional coherence, here's a visual I'll let you take a look at for different responsibilities at different levels of the system. When we work with districts and the teams that I'll talk about, we work from the district office all the way to the classroom level, because it's not one person's responsibility. If it was, it would be rather easy to fix, right? But the idea of are we connecting with teachers? Are we connecting with principals? Are we connecting with the district office to make a coherent instructional program for students as they experience the system that way? Obviously, at the state level, things like common standards and assessment and teacher credentialing, which has been in the news lately with our new P3 credential, are a part of that puzzle. But in terms of what can be accomplished where you guys are and where we work, is that district system with the school and the classroom. So the idea of what can we accomplish, right? What's the power here? I think many of you are probably aware of this concept of preschool fade out. Many studies have shown that no matter how great a student's preschool experience, both 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, if it's not directly connected to kinder and 1 and 2, the impact of that preschool experience will fade out by the time students reach 3rd grade. And so how do we combat that? What do we do about that? And so couple things that we work with our districts, and I would challenge you to work where you are. Understand the benefit across the board, right, to students and teachers and administrators. One thing that's really important for districts, and as a former superintendent, I saw this all the time. How do I see this from fellow districts? It's one thing to see this in a report from the state or in a report from a university, but what does it look like in practice in a district nearby, right? That's a really important piece of why we work in networks. And then finally, how is it sustainable? I think we've all been part of professional development efforts that had a lot of excitement and fanfare and maybe faded out after a year or after a principal changed or after a superintendent changed. How do we make sure that path to improvement is sustainable and is equally felt as important at all levels of the system? So those are 3 areas that we'll talk about and how that might apply to your situation. So one of our key components at Ed Partners is district-to-district collaboration. And so let's talk a little bit about that. We work with networks of districts, as I mentioned, for 3 years. And at the beginning of the 3 years, we make them this promise. At the conclusion of collaborative continuous improvement work with California education partners, districts and their schools will help the skills and knowledge to further develop, execute, and spread a sustainable improvement approach. And then the part in bold is bold for a reason. That's contextually driven. So it has to work in each district situation with their resources, with their staffing, with their facilities, and that improves student outcomes. Because if it's just about making adults feel better or just about putting together some clever binder that sits on a shelf and nobody ever looks at, then why are we doing the work? We have to have students at the front of this work. And so that's the promise that we make to our districts, that we try to hold ourselves to, and really empower our districts to redesign their own system. Because again, as I mentioned at the top, we really believe that the educators in the system are the ones that can make the difference for kids. So this is a framework. I won't go through everything on here. Again, these slides will be available for you afterwards. But what I would lift up for you is the idea of a deliberate approach. You heard folks in the video talk about not jumping to solutions too quickly. I think that often as educators, we want that silver bullet, that answer. And we work with our teams and we work with our districts to design what they think is going to be an improvement, to go through the PDSA process, the Plan, Do, Study, Act process, to consolidate their learnings and decide if they want to adopt, adapt, or abandon that approach to try it again. And so at a higher level, we know that the districts need 3 aspects to be able to be successful in this process. So the idea of, we'll start with HEAD, which is I think something that we all tend to gravitate to. What's that tool or that system or that new structure that's going to improve things for students? Well, those are important, but they can't be by themselves the answer. It has to exist with heart. So it has to exist within a culture that empowers educators and that has an equity-centered mindset. And then you have to have help. You have to have hands, right? So you have to have a collaborative approach that leverages the expertise within your district and outside your district to be able to push things forward. So we feel like you need all 3 principles to make lasting change in your district. Our approach, we roll up our sleeves and we stand shoulder to shoulder with our districts. We are happy to say that we're back in person with our districts after a crazy time that we were virtual. We bring them together to talk to each other. We also can be that coach when things get crazy to have them headed in the right direction. And we can also reach out to other experts because our staff doesn't have all the answers. We partner with our early math work with the DREAM Network out of Stanford University, which we think does some great work on early math and connects our districts with experts in that area as well. So one thing that I'll mention at this point, because I know there's a question about it, all of our work is supported by foundations. And so the districts that we work with at no cost to the district, thanks to support from several fantastic philanthropies, the Heising-Simons Foundation, the McClatchy Foundation, the Sobrato Foundation, the California Community Foundation. They've been able to support this work so that our districts working on early math do this free of charge. Obviously, there's a great deal of time, energy, and effort on our district's part. I don't want to undermine that, but this is not a service that is a profit maker for us. We do this with the help of philanthropy. So wanted to make sure people were aware of that. And so we put folks together in teams. We call them improvement teams. And it's really important that they have folks from every level. We're talking about teachers and counselors. We're talking about coaches and TOSAs. I know there's a lot of you guys watching. Got to have site leadership, whether that's a principal or a vice principal. Got to have district level leadership. We do something a little special with the superintendents that I can talk about. But we feel like this vertical team can build that capacity to make change because we need inputs from all levels. And in districts that we work with, these teams can make real change, not just at one school site, but across the district. So want to dig in a little bit directly to what the work looks like with our collaboration, give you some examples of the districts that are doing this work, and of course, see some students, because that's kind of the way we all do this work. So these are our 25 districts across the state that are doing this work with us. And you can see they're maybe not your usual suspects. They're those small and middle-sized districts, that magic middle that I talked about. And so we work with these districts. We had the first group that joined us in the spring of 2020. That's right. They signed up with us literally in March of 2020 when the world was kind of collapsing around us. And then we added another group of districts in the spring of 2021. And so all of these districts have preschool partners that they work with. Some are state preschool providers, and others work with preschool providers that are on their campus. But we're talking about students 4 years old through 8 years old as part of the collaboration. So what does that look like over the course of 3 years? The idea that we want to take things deliberately, but we don't want to stop working when we have students that need us all the time. So the idea of deeply understanding your system. And when I say system, often, as you guys are well aware, early ed and what is traditionally K-12 may be seen as totally different systems. So how are these working together? What are the language? What are the structures? What are the data that may not talk to each other right now? And how do we establish those routines? You might have, as we heard from some of our districts, an administrator say, our preschool teachers and our kinder teachers can collaborate whenever they want. And then the preschool teacher in the group would say, we actually don't have any time when the kinder teachers are free to collaborate with them. And the administrator says, oh, maybe we should address that, right? So we really want each system to be able to understand specifically what's working and what's not. In year 2, what are those changes that have seen some impact on the classroom level or at one school site, and what can begin to spread to other schools in the system? And then finally, in year 3, what's it look like to be sustainable in this work? What's it look like long-term? How can that improvement team be the team that leads the work across the district? And so specifically, and here's when I ask you to think about your system, we focused in on 3 key areas. The high quality learning experiences. So what is a student experiencing in the classroom? Different ways to assess learning, and then how are adults in the system collaborating, right? So let me show you a next slide to give you some more detail, and then I'm going to ask you a question about this. So here's another piece to think about. We've designated it from the classroom level to the system level, where high quality learning experiences can encompass a focus on student assets rather than student deficiencies, a focus on teacher practice. And then if you're going horizontally across, does the system have common expectations for what classroom learning looks like? Are teachers able to see each other teach? Not observation from a punitive point, but observation from a supportive point. And most importantly, are the resources there to do all these things? From assessing learning, at the classroom level, do we have a common understanding of formative assessments? Are we using data to then drive our instruction? Do classroom teachers have access to that data? At the system level, are we having common assessments? Is data accessible across sites? And is it used to support students? And finally, from the adult space, do we have teacher collaboration and oversight, meaning principals that are deeply connected to learning, not principals who kind of wave as they walk by? Because I might have done that at one point in my career. I'll call out myself. Are they deeply embedded in it? Is there an organizational structure that promotes this? Are there key places where families are integrated, because families are adults in our system? So is that integrated? And then is the professional learning to support it? So let me ask you this question now. As you think of your system right now, where would you say the biggest challenge is, right? Is it in the high quality learning experiences? Is it in assessing learning? Is it adult collaborative learning? Just take a minute to think about the system you're in right now, and where you would say the biggest challenge is. I'll give you another 15 seconds. And again, you might say all of them, but I'm asking you to pick one that you think is the biggest challenge. I think everyone's had a chance to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Oh, okay, interesting. So just so folks are aware, 48% of you said adult collaborative learning, 20% said assessing learning, and 30% said high quality learning experiences. So that's really interesting and not surprising at all. We have seen in our districts that the adult collaborative spaces are a gateway to the other two spaces, right? That if adults can't collaborate, it's harder to have high quality learning experiences and assessment that is really integrated in the classroom. And so when you're talking about preschool and TK and K compared with 1, 2, and 3, there are some often systemic barriers to literally getting adults together to do the good work that they're capable of. So what does this look like in a district? What does it look like? What are some practices that we can talk about as it's relating to early math? Let me show you some examples of the districts that we've worked with and give you some key takeaways. So one thing that I'll lift up from the beginning is a district-wide commitment. So the districts that work with us have made this commitment to work with us for 3 years. They bring together a team of teachers and administrators, as I mentioned, to meet at least monthly to focus on coherence. We offer shared learning opportunities virtually with experts from the DREAM network. We ask those teachers to try out small change ideas in their classrooms at their school sites, and then determine what is working and what needs to be adjusted. And then 3 times a year, we bring all of our districts together, and finally we've been able to do it in person again, so they can share their challenges and their successes with their other districts. And then, as you see in this picture, it's really important to keep the school boards informed of the work. Often boards of education can see this as very distant or something that's not directly on their radar. So communicating to them why this is so important. And in fact, in this picture right here, there were two teachers, a kinder teacher and a first grade teacher, who actually put the Board of Education through one of the activities that their students were doing to show the importance of coherence and collaboration. High quality learning experiences. What does that look like? Is there a common agreement, a common understanding? And are there a few key learning experiences that teachers can have a common vocabulary and understanding across the grade levels, right? So if you decide in your school district that manipulatives are critical, right? Is there a common understanding of that? When you talk about counting, is that something that teachers can get behind at different grade levels and use the same structure and the same ideas? Because it's really important to have a common vocabulary so that adults can talk about student learning in a similar way. And one of the things that I'll show you is in a few of our districts, they've focused on counting as a really good gateway, specifically through counting collections. And I think some of you are familiar with that. I'm going to show you two videos of students that are doing counting collections and being questioned by their teacher. And as I show these, think about a couple things for yourselves. What does the task involve? What are the students doing? And what are the teachers doing? Right. So we'll show the first one, which is about 2 minutes, and the second one's about 1.5 minutes to give you a sense of that.
I grouped them by
You did groups of, and then you're doing, what are you doing again? Okay. You can scoot them over. Okay, so do you have equal amounts on each array?
No.
Okay, so then what does that mean?
You can't use an array.
Well, maybe you can. What if you, the last row where you have less than the other rows, what if you disperse those scratchies onto the 2 rows? So the bottom row that you have, so you had 2 here, right? And see how you have 4 or 5 left? So why don't you group these onto these 2 rows? Okay, so now do you have equal amounts?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to count them?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Okay, and how many do you have in each row?
2. I'm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10.
So you have 10 in each row, and how many rows do you have?
2.
2. So how would you relate that to multiplication?
2 times 10.
Good. And what about, we've learned about commutative property of multiplication. And what does that mean? Do you remember?
You could switch the numbers around and you would still get the same answer.
Awesome. So do you, okay, good. So thank you so much.
Sorry about the sound at the beginning of that video. I know that we want to make sure that you heard that. So a couple things I'll lift up for you in that, just in terms of teacher as guide and how active the student was. And the key thing there is that it can be adjusted for each grade level from TK up to 3rd grade. As the complexity of the math increases, you can still have student voice and you can still have teacher as a guide and be able to learn a lot of what the student has perceived, what their mathematical thinking looks like. And so we'll show one more here with a different piece. This student's very focused on cash, so he's counting cash, and I'll let you see that.
80, 90, 100, 110, 120.
Okay. Now, can you, so your total was 120, right?
Oh, so this is 110 right here, and this is 120.
Okay. And can you show me that in either addition or multiplication, since that's what we're learning right now?
So if you have 10 and you got times, you equal 100.
And how many bills do you need to get 100?
10,
Okay. And but you have how many here?
120.
20. So what do you think? What do you think is missing from your multiplication sentence?
So you're gonna, I think we got to put in 20 right here, and then I think that would equal 120.
Good. So can you repeat the multiplication sentence? Awesome job. Thank you.
And so just a couple things there I'll lift up: the idea of counting and recounting, organization, and alternate approaches. These are all things that you can see, but more importantly, can be a common dialogue for teachers from TK all the way to third grade. And so counting, not the only activity that you could pick, but as you're talking to teachers at different grade levels, it's important to pick a common activity with a common vocabulary so that there can be those deep conversations. And we'll go ahead. Oh, there we go. Also, the idea of open-ended tasks, right? Not one specific answer, giving teachers some insight into student thinking. The other thing I'll do, and we'll in the interest of time, move past this video a little bit, but just the idea of being able to have different ways of assessing, particularly with students of different home languages, right? The idea that is there a way to allow them to express themselves? This particular teacher put together a Padlet to allow students to be able to show what they knew, and then she was able to have that assessment available to her. And as a lot of you mentioned, the adult collaborative learning can be challenging. Many districts, maybe your district, has grade level PLCs. That's a traditional plan, right? That first grade teachers meet together, kinder teachers meet together. But what does it look like to have vertical teams? What does it look like to get people together across grade levels? What does it look like for pre-K that may be on a different schedule, right? Have we addressed that? What does it look like to bring all the adults together to have those important conversations? In our model, we pull them together 3 times a year, and you can see a picture like this where you have multiple districts meeting together. But even within your own district, how are we able to take the improvement team's work and match it to yearly goals so that folks are able to know what progress is being made when adults are working together? And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the massive impact of family partnerships, because we know that the most important adult in our youngsters' lives are the folks at home. And that was never more true than when we had to live through distance learning. And so what you see here is a Flipgrid tool that this particular teacher used to encourage counting at home, so that the families could be a part of recording the Flipgrid, and then students and families could see what other students had counted in their classes. And so if we don't bring families into the puzzle piece that is early learning, we're missing a key adult component. I think often when we think of adult collaboration, we just think of folks that specifically work for the school system, and maybe we missed that. So I've just put that on your list. So with all that to be said, how do we get these practices out there, and what's it look like? So we think at Ed Partners that the districts doing the work are the most important. That's why they're at the center. We want folks at the state level to hear about the power of coherence in early math and what that could do so that it can have an impact on policy. We also know that it's not easy. And so how do you address implementation challenges when you're trying to get preschool teachers on the same schedule as kinder and first grade teachers? What does it mean to do this not just at one school site, but across your system? So the idea of being able to share those promising practices and share what districts have been able to achieve with other districts in the state and with state policymakers, we think is a critical piece to make this more accessible to more districts across California. And so I'll leave you with a couple of closing thoughts and then ask you to engage in a challenge in the last 3 minutes that we have. We believe that how something was implemented is just as important as what it is. We believe that you guys inspire each other at events just like this one. And it's important for every district to see themselves as being a promising practice district, not just the wealthy coastal districts, but every district in California in all contexts. So with that, we're all challenged right now to add a 14th grade, right? TK is a 14th grade. And so the idea of capacity, we need teachers. We don't really have any experience because we looked it up, and the last time we added a grade was kindergarten in 1962. And we want to make sure everybody has access to promising practices. So that's where we come in to try and lift this up. So here is my challenge to you. I'm going to give you a minute to think about this. Your coherence commitment. Think about transitions from grade to grade as a process rather than an event. Think about your system designed from a student and family perspective that moves vertically through your system, not horizontally. Think about the adults in the system mutually agreeing to meet students where they are, regardless of the grade level they're in, right? If a kinder student is working at a first grade level, how are we meeting them where they are? And if a TK student needs extra support, how are we meeting them where they are? And embrace the power of collaboration, because I know that within each of your systems, there are experts in what they do. And are you able to unlock that and share that through collaboration? So if you could just, in the question and answer, let me know which of these commitments you're going to put forward front and center for the next year. Which of these do you think is the most important for you and your system? Is it that transition? Is it the vertical? Is it the meeting students where they are, right? You guys will have copies of all these slides so that you can share this with your district. And so we want to make sure that you have that sense of commitment moving forward. Okay. So I want to thank you guys for taking time out of your summers, for being here. Don't hesitate to follow up with me. Again, if you have any other questions, you can put them in there. You can email me directly, skellner@caedpartners.org. You can follow me on Twitter. You can go to our website to find more specific information. But we really appreciate all the work that you do, all the work that you're going to continue to do. And starting next year, we'll be adding a new collaboration, a new group of districts. So if your district is interested in that, don't hesitate to reach out to me via email or go to our website. So thank you all so much. We really, really appreciate all that you do. And we thank you for taking the time during this session to come and spend it with us. Thanks so much, folks.